The XRP community has a disproportionately high amount of Christ followers. What is the go with that?
This one gets to the root of where I think things are going, and it's something philosophically that I have been stewing on. I had a big transformative travel schedule through Orthodox holy areas of the world, through Greece, through Serbia, Italy, Catholic and Orthodox. I think the Lord put on my heart across that trip as I was getting aggressively pruned the end game. I also had a long talk to a master's in theology from the States. First, we've got to look at why do we think that there's the disproportionate amount of Christians in this community. I firmly believe that the dots can't be connected unless the blindfold is lifted. I firmly think that the blindfold is lifted through the blessing of the Father, and you have to have your Jesus FM antenna on to have the blindfold lifted. 95% of the crypto community don't have Jesus FM turned on, and that's why they're in the dark, and that's why they hate XRP, and that's why they don't see any of the dots to be connected.
Welcome back to About My Father's Business. I am your host, Holly Loxton. Today I have Nathan Derryman. Did I say that right?
Nailed it.
Awesome. He is joining me. We are going to discuss possibly, I just feel like this is going to be the most important podcast that I've ever done. So just before we lock in, I just want to express that this is not financial advice, right? This is not financial advice. Guys, you need to go and do your own financial research.
This is for entertainment purposes only.
It's for entertainment purposes only. We're going to be discussing a lot about world events and governments and finances and things like that. So I just want to make sure you guys understand that this is actually a wake-up call from people that have seen this coming down the pipeline for years, and we just refuse to stay silent on this. So there is a beast system rising. And if you guys haven't listened to the last podcast that I did with Brian, I suggest you go and listen to that to really get the spiritual understanding of what's going on. But today we're actually talking about the infrastructure that's coming down the pipeline. And Nathan has been in XRP for a very long time. I've been following him for years, and I'm just so excited to have his knowledge just to spread to you guys and just give you some really good direction on what you need to be doing and how you need to be preparing, because this is coming for all of us. No one's getting out of this one, right? There's just no way around it. So Nathan, welcome. Thank you. Tell us, who are you? What do you do? And then I want to hear your Jesus testimony.
Yes. I'll keep it brief because the Jesus testimony is more important. Thank you for having me on, Holly. We have indeed been trying to make this happen for a while. My followers know that I've come to Christ particularly rapidly the last year, and I think it's now a perfect time to unpack all that. Me, just a pretty average Aussie bloke, came from working in a gym, entrepreneurial, had a couple of failed businesses that then morphed into Cashew, which is kind of the entity behind me, which I am a co-founder in. We work in investor relations, so helping small companies, publicly listed companies, connect with prospective investors. Most of the companies we work with is within small cap mining, so gold, silver, hence why I'm also very open and public about the importance of owning precious metals. But of course, what I'm probably most known for is the political, geopolitical side of things and how it all ties into this system that I firmly believe will run on XRP and the select ISO compliant tokens that we and your listeners know all too well about. And that really accelerated the last year or so. So I have the kind of company vehicle behind me, but that is very separate and not as congruent as people would think when they see just me talking about the pressing topics online.
Yeah, amazing. And we're going to get stuck into that. But first, I want to know, how did it happen? What was your come to Jesus moment, sir? I love these stories. Hit me.
So the come to Jesus moment is actually also to do with XRP. So it's the double whammy. And I was on a golf course with a stranger at the time. I'd just moved from Sydney, and this was, 22, I think. I'd come up in 21, bit lost, really beaten down by what they did to us during that period, particularly here in Australia. And I was, we were, my partner and I were chatting at the time. We're kind of like, well, this is this is going to be really tough to just not only set up our footing, but buy a house and do all the things that we need to do to move towards getting foundations in place for a family. And at that time, there had been moments where I'd had proverbial taps on the shoulder by the father, but I couldn't see it as that then. I can look back in retrospect and know that that was what was happening now. So a lot of things happened post leaving Sydney and coming up to the Northern Rivers where there were the taps. And mixing that with the, I guess, daunting realization that financially we were quite trapped, I was opening myself up to some sort of guidance. At the time, I was probably more new agey and wacko than where I am. Well, obviously where I am now, which is the truth. And this is when the Lord kind of answered my calling. I loved diving into hobbies post COVID. That was my kind of outlet to just forget about the trauma of it and try and keep my focus on building something fruitful. So I played lots of golf, jiu-jitsu, and I liked playing with randoms. I used to go and play with a lot of old guys and randoms at different golf courses up here. I wasn't wedded to any group in particular. I enjoyed garnering wisdom from particularly older individuals. And one Sunday morning, I went down to the golf club and I got put in a group with randoms, and one of the guys there saw me with my push buggy and just said, "Oh, I've got a cart. Why don't you jump in the cart with me?" His name was Rob, and he had John 3:16 plastered on his hat. And at the time, I was like, I kind of knew it was a popular passage, but I didn't know what it actually meant. And I just remember that burning into my brain as I stepped into the cart. We go on to talk probably for 4 hours. We get on really well. He starts to tell me of this beast, quote unquote, beast system. He understands a lot of geopolitical things that I didn't think he would, but he had the extra layer of knowledge pertaining to how it all meshed in with the financial system, which I didn't have. I was kind of siloed off in the geopolitical sphere. So by the end of the 4 hours, it was kind of like, I use this analogy a lot. For me, it was like I was this dam of pent up water in the reservoir above. Rob kind of got a huge sledgehammer and put a big crack in the wall, but I hadn't cracked through just yet. So I left that round of golf thinking, wow, okay, so he had these really cool philosophical points. He understands geopolitics. He understands the financial system, and he's a massive man of God and Christ, and he kind of uses that as the axis to frame everything. So I'm like, interesting. A lot to take on. So I went away. I didn't see him for 6 months. We didn't exchange numbers. It was just because as I said, I liked just floating with the wind and playing with random. So I at that point I did invest because I backtrack a little bit. He did mention XRP, but he didn't hammer it down my throat. So he said, you should look into it. Just like a salesman, I guess if you push it too much, you're going to be a bit deterred. So he just planted the seed. I went off, I bought a little bit, couple of grand worth, and I kept an eye on things, but I didn't really understand it. And 6 months went on. I dipped my toe in at different times to try to grasp just what was going on. And I just, quite simply, I couldn't do it. I just couldn't get my head around the value proposition enough for me to go all in. I was more traditional investing. ETFs did well with the rise of lithium in EVs and the use of applications there, all that sort of stuff. 6 months goes on. I'm sitting there again, Anth, my partner, and we go, this financial situation is just yeah, maybe in 15, 20 years, we might be able to afford a house. And, or if the business rips and goes really well, which it actually is now, which is good, but it wasn't clicking. So then a couple of unfortunate things happened behind the scenes, family things. And it was literally the very next weekend, I went back to golf, booked in randomly, and up pops Rob again.
God bless Rob.
God bless Rob. Get in the cart with Rob, John 3:16, blazing in my eyeballs again. And this time, the dam broke. So the dam walls cracked. Some of the theology he was espousing and the dots that I couldn't connect the prior 6 months started to connect, and the neurons started to fire like they'd never fired before. At the end of the kind of game, the round, of golf, he then told me, he said, look, you seem to be understanding. I've put my entire life savings in this. So for instance, for the listeners, Rob bought XRP at under a cent. Under a cent. Yeah. He's telling me that on the weekend. So he didn't have heaps of money when he got in, but he got in under a cent. So he has a lot. So Robbie's he's actually since retired. We've become good friends now. But after that, the dam breaks. He tells me that he went all in on it. He has such conviction. He's like, it's literally everything. My super, all of it has now gone in. He didn't get everything in it under a cent. His initial dabble was under a cent at like 20, I think it was in 2015 or 2016. So from there, it was literally a year and a half. I was just possessed to understand. And probably 6 months after, maybe 6 to 8 months after getting my head around, God pushed me to first be pruned. So whether I liked it or not, he was pruning aspects of me that were really, bad for our progress as a team. And then
we don't like the pruning process most of the time. Let's face it.
No,
very painful.
I've been saying a lot lately. If you told me who I'd be today, a year and a half ago, I'd slap you in the face because I just wouldn't believe you. But the things that have had to be pruned away, and all power to it now that I understand why they're gone. But the first 6 months, God only meets you where you are. And God met me at the point where it's like, look, he's still too logical and rational. We're just going to get him to understand where things are moving and get a really sophisticated knowledge. So I'd never been this possessed. I didn't like research or school all that much, but I was possessed to understand this. So I spent a year and a half, thousands of hours. And then it was at that point, probably about US election. So this is, a year and a half of doing this. Just before US election last year is when I shifted gear from just exclusively talking politics to teasing out and saying, look, guys, as soon as Trump wins this, whether you like him or not, this thing's going to rip. So it was probably August last year that I started to tease it out and do content on XRP. And maybe that's when you might have seen some of my early stuff. But as soon as he got in and things started to move, that was the validation at the cellular level, the soul, everything, where I went, yep, that was the Almighty. I was right because of him. And that's when one of our good friends that is really close with my partner, she came into our life. She lives on a farm that's owned by our pastor. She took us out to church. And then, from probably October last year, that's when I really immersed in the theology, and I think we were talking at that point, but I wasn't ready yet because this was when the massive pruning process kicked off. So, okay, you now know I'm real, not just because of what just happened and how I told you a year and a half in advance that it would happen, but now we need to get you prepared for what is actually next, the beast system, et cetera, et cetera. But that was the testimony. And ever since, late last year, and I've been going to church every week, unpacking getting, first and foremost, establishing my relationship with Jesus, understanding what he did intricately, who he was as a person, why he did the things that he did, and his message. And that was the most profound part. It was a very reverse engineered process for me. Some people come to Christ, I guess, through instant feeling, but I guess to break down through the rational and logical layers of my brain, it was a very granular layer by layer process that in hindsight wasn't that long. I mean, it's only been from the dam breaking to now is probably only 2.5 years. So pretty significant strides have been made, and yeah, all glory to him. But that was the real kicker. John 3:16 with Robbie on the golf course. That was it.
That is incredible. And it's really interesting because like God, you can see God moving. God is calling his remnant home. The last 3 years in particular, there is just this wave of people waking up and coming to Jesus through all different circumstances, right? But I have noticed being in the XRP community and in what I would say like the truther community, tinfoil hat community, conspiracy fact theory community, as we like to call it, um, people that have woken up in 2020, a lot of them are also coming to Jesus because if you go down these rabbit holes far enough, you'll come to Christ,
Oh yeah,
right? He's at the bottom of every single one of them. You wake up to the satanic Hollywood agenda, you're like, hang on a second, Satan, that's in the Bible. What's going on here? And then you start piecing the dots together and you're like,
yeah.
whoa, hang on a second. And that for some people can be very confronting. When that cognitive dissonance shatters, it can be very disorienting. And so that's part of the reason why I want to really speak about this stuff to people that are just coming to Christ, because there's people out here that are, a few steps ahead of you, and we can give you the information and the support and the help to join that final dot together and figure this stuff out. But I did notice that the XRP community has a disproportionately high amount of Christ followers. What is the go with that? Is it just because we can connect the dots?
Well, this one, Holly, gets to the root of really where I think things are going. And it's something philosophically that I have been stewing on, particularly the last few months. I had a big transformative travel schedule the last 3 months, got back recently, where we did a lot of travel through like Orthodox holy areas of the world, through Greece, through Serbia, Italy. I did a few things in Italy as well, Catholic and Orthodox. And I think the Lord put on my heart across that trip, as I was getting aggressively pruned, the end game. Now, I also had a long talk to a master's in theology yesterday who reached out from the States. Amazing chat. This is going to be, I've got to really nail how I articulate this, because this is kind of like a mind boggler in itself.
The person,
and I haven't communicated it. This is what I'm about to do with this big project I'm working on, that master web.
Yep.
And where I think it all goes. So first, we've got to look at why do we think that there's the disproportionate amount of Christians in this community? And my answer to that is, I firmly believe that the dots can't be connected unless the blindfold is lifted. I firmly think that the blindfold is lifted through the blessing of the Father, and you have to have your Jesus FM antenna on to have the blindfold lifted. So that's the first step. I think 95% of the crypto community don't have Jesus FM turned on. They've never listened to that radio station, and that's why they're in the dark, and that's why they hate XRP, and that's why they don't see any of the dots to be connected. But then you also grapple with the moral and ethical paradigm of this technology, because you do have concrete links to some insidious organizations and malevolent groups. That was the next plane of thinking that I've unpacked a bit on some of my podcasts, where I go, well, why would the Father lead us to a technology that could be hurting civilization? It doesn't really make sense. This is where I've had the big revelations recently. we know in the technology that it is decentralized. That's not, everyone says it's not, it's centralized. It is decentralized. The keys to the castle were thrown away at creation. They can never freeze your XRP. They can never take your XRP. It is decentralized. Go listen to David Schwartz talk about it. If you really want to get technical, go listen to Quincy Jones talk about it, who is a developer at both Ripple and XDC. So you go, okay, so it's a double-edged sword. They could use it malevolently, but at the same time, we're going to benefit off it. Great. And they can't take it away from us. So where does the good come from? In my firm belief, I think that this technology is a once in a generation, once in a lifetime opportunity for, and I don't want to say this as like a high horse thing, but the chosen people. It's not the chosen people. Everyone's chosen, but you need your Jesus FM radio station on. And that's why we can see it. And what will happen is if we do go towards the beast system, just like across history, I do think there will be a revolt of some sorts, and it will come from the people that are the beneficiaries of this wealth transfer. Because never in human history, and we won't go down the political spectrum too much, otherwise this podcast won't last long wherever it's dispatched. But certain groups of people have controlled the banking cartel for too long, and the world's money. And I firmly believe that we are on the precipice of the most monumental paradigm shift ever. And I think that the Christians will hold the keys to the new kingdom. And if you look through Revelations and you look through the biblical scripture, I don't think Jesus would want us to be sitting on our hands right now, not preparing for what he wants. His eternal kingdom, however you skin the cat and look at Revelations, whether it's 1,000 years of peace here on earth, or he comes down and builds the kingdom instantly, however you skin the cat, it doesn't matter. The point is, this is a gift from God right now that only a select few people, less than a few 100,000 people, as I've discussed, will probably be there at the end of this when price appreciation really kicks in. What we need to do as Christians under the guise of Christ is to not just live like him, but prepare his kingdom for him, is my belief. And what does that look like? Well, when we collectively syndicate all of our money together for the betterment of civilization, for the people that missed out, to bring more people onto the proverbial boats to ride the wave of Christ. We already feel that happening now. It's brewing. All we need is the final resource to actually enact it in this new system. And when that happens and we can syndicate all of this wealth under an umbrella of Christ morals, I truly, truly believe that is where things shift drastically. And maybe I don't actually fear this potential beast system. I don't. It loses either way. Maybe it doesn't even become a beast system. Maybe the pushback happens before then. I'm not sure. But what I do know is the end game is the same both ways. And it's no coincidence that you've got, people like us and people in our community going, well, yeah, we're preparing to, build communes and make sure we have the right skill sets there to forage and to hunt and to create and to be financially literate and to barter and to trade and to build. And these things are going to be essential in what we do move towards. And I think there'll be a level of conscientiousness that's put upon Christians today to prepare. Whether he's coming back in 100 years or 1,000 years, no one really knows. Only the Father knows. It doesn't matter if you get the highest IQ in the world, like that Jung Song Kim who says he's coming back in 2060, but who now is a Bitcoin maxi, so he can't possibly be that smart. Then you don't need to listen to Jim Song Kim. You need to listen to your heart and what the Father's telling us now, which is to prepare and to get as many people on the boat as possible. So I think the end game is actually beautiful, Holly. I do. I think the end game is I'm excited. Bring it on. I just can't wait for this to unwrap. And I can't wait to just help so many people in this new Christ-centered community and watch it blossom. That's what I'm pumped for.
Yeah, same. I'm really, really looking forward to that as well. And the Bible says the wealth of the wicked is stored up for the righteous, right?
Spot on.
So this is one of the things. Now I want to talk. So there's a few different ways I want to go with this podcast. First of all, I want to give people a little bit of a background on what XRP actually is. Is it going to be the rails for the new financial system? And if so, and would they bring in digital IDs, are we going to have to take the mark to use it? Is my question. Then we've also got the question of central bank digital currencies or CBDCs that they said that they wouldn't do, but then they're like, oh, but stable coins. And I'm like,
Yeah.
that's the same thing, guys. Like, it's just a different name. You're doing the same thing. So hit me. Tell me in your words, describe it briefly. What is XRP? People need to know.
So XRP is a very unique currency. It is standalone at the top, in my opinion. Unlike Bitcoin, Solana, Ethereum, its main goal is to settle value, any means of value, instantly for under a penny. So, when you buy something at a grocery store, you'll still pay merchant fees. That's pretty instant, but if you're going to send or receive money from the US here in Australia, a few $1,000, you'll pay a flat SWIFT fee, which might cost you X percent. It's actually quite Xy, and it's going to take you 3 days. So the most simple framework initially is to just look at it as a mechanism for instant settlement. And that was their original thesis. It's branched off into many other realms that actually will drive more value, in my opinion, like settling the back end of the stock market, tokenizing houses, tokenizing commodities, all those sorts of things, because that's the key. It is the ultimate settlement layer for value, and nothing else can do it. You go, oh, well, why can't Bitcoin do it? Bitcoin doesn't have a few things in its tech stack. One being the DEX. So one of the most infamous, underutilized components of the tech stack in XRP is the DEX, which is the decentralized exchange. And what that does, and you can see it in some videos that Chris Larson shows, where he actually settles Bitcoin for under a penny and under a second, but it's run across XRP rails. He did this in a demo about 10 years ago. This is doable because in the end game, when you've got billions of dollars worth of real estate, billions of dollars worth of commodities, stocks, currency, all pooled within the XRPL, so the technology, a suitor, or a transaction, I should say, can take place at any value. So we can talk trillions of dollars as well. And the XRPL will draw liquidity, the liquidity needs from the DEX in real time to ensure that $1 trillion transaction goes through. Nothing else can do that. Nothing else has this. It's called the rippling algorithm. So the rippling algorithm is kind of the backbone of the DEX, and that is what facilitates that process. The other layers to this from a practical standpoint for the listeners, because a lot of that might go over your head, is this notion of why do you get paid fortnightly or monthly? No one ever questions that. The main reason is because there's so much back end that's associated with payday, from accountants, from tax, from super, from payroll. All of that is layers upon layers upon layers of necessary inefficiencies, but now they're not necessary because blockchain essentially is just one big accounting mechanism that can seamlessly address those problems. So in a perfect world, pretty soon you'll be able to have your money streamed to you daily. I think that will happen. And that can happen through, probably a lot of different tokens, but that's maybe more of a point to make towards why we're moving so quickly towards this world, because there are so many of these deficiencies. That's a consumer level kind of retail day-to-day example. You can only imagine with Swift, the network that runs the backbone of international cross-border payments, how it is very, very inefficient. Days to settle and costs a lot of money to do it. And that's really the crux of the problems that this technology is trying to effectively solve.
Yeah, so correct me if I'm wrong on this one, but my very, very basic understanding of it is that there is no other technology that we have in the world that has enough pull power and is in enough financial institutions and places like that that has the liquidity, the speed, and the inexpensiveness of XRP. And now they're looking to take over at least a large percentage of the Swift system. So anytime you do a cross-border payment for anything, instead of taking 3 days, it's going to take, what, 3 seconds?
Yeah.
And it's going to cost 3 cents.
Under a cent,
Under a
under a
cent.
penny. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's
So
a good way to put it. And I think they will compare. I think they'll obliterate Swift. I used this. I think could be a blockbuster video easy style event when Netflix came out. It could. I'm not saying it will, but it could. And you're right. It's all down to liquidity. It's not quite there yet. Another popular question is, well, why isn't it already high? We're still waiting for legal clarity, which comes later this year, November, probably with the Clarity Act, where XRP will be classified as a commodity, is my prediction. And then institutions know how they can legally engage with it. And there has been no legal clarity to engage with this thing yet. Plenty of testing. We've seen moments, but most of it's still siloed off on this. Yeah, we won't go into that private public, probably a bit too much for this chat, but yes,
yeah,
for the audience. But yeah,
I've seen it glitched out to about 40 grand at one stage. I'm like, what?
yeah,
So currently XRP is sitting around what, $4 something Australian?
450, I think. Yeah, Aussie.
450? Yeah, Aussie. So, I mean, I bought it at under 30 cents, which is pretty cool.
Awesome.
But I digress. So, this is why it is so important, because what's the difference between XRP and the stable coins that the world currencies are going to run on? People go, why don't we all just use XRP? Why do we have to have XDC, XLM, Australian dollar? Like what's going to happen with that?
So firstly, why all these different protocols? I'll answer that. Every one of them serves their own little unique purpose. So XDC is more trade finance and logistics, shipping, freights, all that sort of stuff. They've cherry picked that little segment of the market to address, and they've got their relationships very much centered around that, which is different to dealing with the big banks for cross-border payments, tokenization, all that sort of stuff. So XDC will do that. XLM is very much focused on the consumer-centric side of things. So, our everyday payments, everyday sending money overseas to peer-to-peer, not bank-to-bank institutional. So they're kind of below. XRP and Ripple are going for the big money. XLM's going for the consumer side. It's still big money, but much smaller than the institutional. Solana is just a useless meme coin building protocol. And Bitcoin is... I won't crap on Bitcoin, because Bitcoin... One thing people need to understand with Bitcoin is its relevance, whilst heavily manipulated by Tether and propped up in Ponzi scheme fashion, its underlying value really is the fact that Satoshi, whoever it is, created a system that demands a lot of energy to produce and mine new coins. So in the world today, the price of everything is dictated by energy. Every single layer, they put that in their margins, and that's what dictates price. So the relevancy of Bitcoin, not just as a store of value, which is all it ever will be, and it's the reason it's still around, and the reason probably why I don't think it completely dies is because as long as we run on like a fossil fuel system, it demands a lot of like physical energy output to actually run and discover, and that's a big chunk of its value. And right now that doesn't look like it's changing.
Isn't that then in direct contradiction to the whole woke climate change system? Like,
It is, but I mean that's why, like, the
when are they going to
wokes.
ban it? Is it going to be the biggest rug pull of all time?
I don't think so. I think it'll become like a collector's coin. So it'll become like a yeah. I think it'll become like it was the first. Supposedly, I've got literally got proof that it wasn't the first one, but the supposed first ever crypto. And as long as Satoshi remains anonymous, it will have collector's value, and it'll be a store of value. But I don't think it really doesn't have any practical use. It's slow, takes average. I mean, at best case, you're looking at 10 to 15 minutes to pull off transactions. Yeah, okay, they go, oh, well, we've got Bitcoin Lightning now, and that helps. Yeah, but it doesn't solve the problem at scale, and that's the that's the big key here.
So
And of course,
it'd basically be like digital gold, essentially. So you
but it's not. Right now it's speculative. Everything's speculative value. All the prices in the market are speculative, and I just don't think people realize what's about to happen when they're actually being used for their intended purpose. And we talked a bit about that with XRP before. Bitcoin doesn't have an intended purpose. What's it going to do? It just sits there. It's a straw. So it will get flipped. I don't. My thesis is it won't just go to zero. I don't think that. But it won't be number one. And the second part of that question was the stable coins, and that's the most poignant kind of topical thing happening at the moment with Genius Act passing and every Bob, Jane, Dick, and Harry coming out with their own stable coin. The first thing to remember about this Genius Act is if you read the fine print, you will need certification from the Office of the Comptroller of the Currency, which is like essentially in the US, this mob that give you the final sign off on anything fiscally technological that could be employed in the banking system. So what you'll see, and you can see it in the language, it's not going to be a free for all with all these. Not everyone can launch their own stable coins. You're going to need approval. The institutions, so the banks, are going to really moderate the interest earning on these coins. And it will be quite centralized. So to the speculation of, well, is a stablecoin just a CBDC in disguise? It is. Yes, it is. It's centrally issued or dictated who can issue it. It's not just a free-for-all. And there's rigid protocol that you have to abide by. For instance, it must be backed one-to-one with debt. So the short-term US treasuries, which is a great... We'll get into that in a bit, but that's how we're going to partly solve this debt problem and pump the prices massively into the crypto cloud. The to the point around stablecoins just solving XRP's problem, this is the one where it gets a bit technical and it's important to address. Stablecoins, in essence, do facilitate instant cross-border transactions between intermediaries, and that's fantastic. It helps out at sort of that middle level, hundreds of millions to a couple $billion in transactions across like batch. They basically batch out big transactions, and they can do it that way. So it's not one big dump of like 50 billion or whatever, and that's appealing to banks because one of the counter arguments to like, and I don't believe this, but actually I'm not going to complicate it with that. That goes down a whole other rabbit hole. I'll keep it simple. So people go, oh, well, they're just going to use that then. Why would they use XRP? Let's stick with this explanation. So the key you have to realize is that even when JP Morgan are using their JPM coin, and then Commonwealth Bank here in Australia using CM coin, to settle that stablecoin transaction, both banks need to make sure they have the amount of actual destination fiat currency, Australian dollar and US dollar. They need to hold the amount to actually make that digital version of the dollar work. It might be gold in the future or a combination of things, but they still have to have their unit of account attached to that digital dollar to process it. So the next logical question is, okay, well, hang on. What if the price gets too big in that transaction and they don't have enough of the destination fiat or value? And that is what is going to happen. So I don't think there will be a need to hold the destination fiat anymore or the destination asset class, because guess where all that sits? It sits in the XRPL DEX. So XRP sits here, the JPM is here, Commonwealth Bank. They don't need to hold the destination fiat and asset classes anymore. They go, oh, well, the XRPL has $30 trillion running through it right now, and it's sitting at $500 a coin. Well, sick. I don't need to hold and it's what's called Nostra Vostra accounts. So they have to hold their notional value in these accounts, and if they don't have it, that's why transfers can take weeks, because they have to then get intermediaries to funnel the value into their Nostro Vostro to settle the transaction. So when you're sitting here now and it's the new age, you go, well, we don't need these intermediaries to fix up our balance sheet to make this go through anymore because we don't have enough. We're just going to go straight through the XRPL, and we know it's going to go through 100% because it's got $50 trillion to choose from to facilitate that transaction. The end game, of course, being that XRP is the trusted settlement layer by all. It's owned by, that's why it's X. It's owned by no one. It's borderless, and it's fully audible, transparent, etc., and it is decentralized. That is the end game, and that is where we're going. So even if you do the stablecoin, let's say you want to move 200 billion through that stablecoin network, it doesn't work unless you funnel it through and actually extract the value from somewhere. It can't just be, printed currency. It has to be backed, and the banks still need that unit of account. And if they don't have it on Nostro Vostro, they need to pull it from somewhere else. That's where they pull it from.
Right.
That's a lot. That's a mouthful, but that's
I
the
get
best
it.
way
I've been talking to my best mate about this for a long time. So he's explained this to me in very similar terms. Amazing. I just which question should I go with next? So what does the value of XRP have to be in order to be able to carry that level of liquidity?
Yeah, high. And I think
how high are we talking, Nate?
high. It has to be like, I think what will probably happen is, first we do need this supply shock that like Jake Claver talks about, to actually get a significant amount of liquidity into the network to then drive the usage. Because it's not, people think, oh, they'll just like click their fingers and start using it. You can't really use it right now at $3 US because it's only got a 200 billion roughly dollar market cap. $200 billion of value in the network is not enough to settle cross-border transactions. And this is the very argument that people make at these banks for why stablecoins in their current form don't exist. The solution doesn't exist yet. USDC is at like $150 billion. And the head of JP Morgan's digital assets goes, well, we settle $7.5 trillion a day. It won't be able to handle it. There's not enough liquidity in USDC to handle what we do. And that to me is the smoking gun. It's like, okay, so in order for this to work, let's just use JP Morgan as an example. He has said openly, 7.5 trillion a day we settle. Now that's not instantly, like that could be like 3 days post fact, right? Well, mathematically speaking, that would mean if XRP just took over the roles of handling JP Morgan's settlement, just them, no one else on the earth, all of it, there would need to be at least $7.5 trillion of liquidity in the XRP ecosystem, which would be how much times more is that than where we are now at 200 billion? That's 5 times. Yeah, I mean, that's already like 50 times more we'd need. Don't quote me on that. My fast maths isn't good, but you get the point. It needs to go up a lot in order for them to leverage it properly. And that's where I can't remember the question, but that was the that's the example I'd use.
How
Oh
high does
yeah,
it
yeah,
have
yeah,
to
yeah.
go in order to carry that that level of liquidity? But it's going to have to go
Yeah, it's gonna have to.
high.
And then if you,
They're
that's
not
one
just going to
bank.
be, yeah, they're not just going to be doing JP Morgan. It's
No,
going
no,
to
no.
be every institution.
Yeah, and I think the reality is for people to understand. This is an important point. They're probably thinking everyone still thinks in terms of traditional market cap. So Nvidia and Apple and Google and stuff, I think they're around the $2 trillion mark as a market cap. That's this asset class is not the same at all. The perfect example for this actually is gold. What's gold's market cap? It's 26 trillion. So it's 10 times more than the most valuable company on earth. Gold. So if gold is a commodity, this is the best way to break it down, and XRP is going to become a commodity, I'm almost certain of that. And XRP's role as a commodity, unlike gold, which is a store of value, is actually to be hyperactive in settling the world's value. What on earth's is its market cap going to be? It's going to be a whole lot higher than gold. That's the maths. It's like right there in front of you. Gold does nothing, store of value because the world has said so, and it's a precious metal, $26 trillion. XRP, look at all the use cases, go Google them. You very quickly realize, whoa, like that, if it's settling the back end of the stock market, it's handling 10% of cross border payments. It's got real world assets tokenized on it. It has 100 million in US treasuries, which is also confirmed, debt tokenized on it. And it's being the intermediary between all the stable coins in the world, and it's settling all this value. Oh, it's going to be a whole lot higher than gold.
Yeah,
Whole lot higher. Hundreds of trillions in market cap eventually.
yeah. And so one thing that I don't think most people understand is that we actually live on a debt-based system. That was the part that was really interesting for me. It's like if XRP is holding all of the world's debt,
Yeah.
it's huge.
It's huge. That'll run through the stable, like, so the stable coins, because they'll be backed by debt, which that will create demand for the debt. And then I think things like Bitcoin will be used to offset on the balance sheet the book value of the debt. And then, of course, the ultimate smoking gun, in my opinion, which is not confirmed, is that you've got all the central banks actually holding a portion of the escrowed XRP at a prearranged price. And when that gets revealed to the world, there's your debt. It's offset. It's completely offset already. They'll just hold it as a commodity because under the Basel III guidelines, you can only hold a certain amount of tier one assets. Gold is classified as a tier one asset. At the moment, crypto is nowhere near that. But once the Clarity Act comes through and, you know, all the other jurisdictions endorse their framework, which they will, and XRP is a commodity, that's when I think they'll blow the lid on the escrow arrangements, and you'll see these institutions come out and say, all right, well, we're holding 2 billion XRP inside the European Central Bank. And at that point, when it's worth, I don't know, it could be worth, even if it's 20, $30 US, That's a lot, but it's nowhere near where it'll get to. And then pretty soon, that's what I mean. It is going to be like this world backbone because it solves all the world's problems. It does. When you really unwrap it all from a practical standpoint, it will solve everything for the world. It will, which
Yeah.
is also a good thing. Um, yeah.
And so my other question that I mentioned before was what happens with digital IDs, which we know, well, I'm not going to say that I know because I don't know, but my very, very, very strong suspicion is that the digital IDs are tied into the beast system. And at some point, in order to access your money, you're going to need a digital ID, which will be your allegiance and your, whether or not you're going to need an actual physical mark or if it's just going to be a biometric. We don't know yet, but at some point we're going to follow in the footsteps of China, and there'll be some sort of social credit scoring AI, control and all of that.
Mm.
Um, that if you're, a bad person, or if you're just saying something that, if the government does something that you don't like and you come out against it, then, and this is, I think this is where people aren't realizing it. I said it the other day on my stories. There's so many people that are like, oh, I don't do anything wrong. I'm a law-abiding citizen. I live a really clean, wholesome life. I don't need to worry about digital IDs. I'm fine with that. It's fine now, but what happens when the powers that be do something that you don't like? And now you don't have a voice because all of your money's controlled and there's no option for you if you've got to feed your family.
Well, that's beholden on us. So the end game for that is, in my eyes, now quite simple. They very well could lead us down that road. Likely, actually. And what we need to understand is the XRP holders in particular, and your audience, if they haven't got it and are Christians, there will be a two-tier system. So the people, God bless them, that haven't had their blindfolds removed, that are walking blindly into this trap, they're not going to be liberated. They're trapped. So most people on Earth, remember, there will be less than 200,000 people that have significant exposure to XRP post price appreciation. That is a minuscule amount of people, minuscule. So, however, we're already seeing through Claver, and I know some from the backdoor chats I've had, that there are going to be products available through institutions for people that have certain amounts of XRP. Remember, they still need to use it, and they know the value of it. So for people like us, we're going to be able to, as a quote unquote pleb, go into an institution and leverage our asset because barely any people will be able to do this. They don't care about 200,000 people, and that's where they lose. This is the psychological play. They don't think that amount of people are possibly going to have much of an impact on the world, but that's where they underestimate the power of Christ and the power of God. Well, God's children that have chosen to see and what they will do for him and fellow lost little lambs. So when that happens, and when most people are running around and they're trapped in this system, we'll already be ready, and we'll be picking up the pieces, and we'll be bringing more people onto the boat because we will be in the two-tier system. We'll be at the top tier of the two-tier system. We won't need to be getting, because remember, the second part of this will be, yes, we're rolling out the UBI now. You don't need to work. You can just hop on your $2,000 of AU digital dollar each week. That'll cover your bills. It's all good. Just like COVID, the ScoMo payments. I do think that probably does end up coming. And you can make arguments for pro and con UBI either way, but that is another layer. And as you said rightly, that might be the point where they go, well, yeah, if you don't have not only digital ID, but you don't have this basket of vaccines, you're not getting a UBI.
And just for people, if they don't understand what a UBI is, it's a universal basic income. It's basically it's an allowance for you
Exactly.
to live. Yeah, from the government.
This is where I think we're going, Holly. It'll be beholden upon us that have broken through to save these people and start to flip the narrative on the head. We cannot underestimate the power, particularly for the listeners that understand and have XRP. I feel it in my loins. I know what's going to happen. When you've got 200,000 people in alignment, even like even 20,000 maybe or 10,000 here in Australia, right? That have unimaginable amounts of money that we syndicate together under God. Do you know what we can do? Like, that's never happened before. We'll be
And
our
that,
own your own government.
yeah,
You can
and that
do what you want.
are actually fully submitted to the true
Exactly.
Yeshua, not the false political
Yeah.
Christ BS that's going on at the moment in America and all of that with the CK stuff, and not the religious Catholicism, what all of that sort of that is taking people away from Christ, but those that are in the remnant that are truly submitted, that are getting their directions directly from God, and they don't, they've been pulverized by God, so they've got the humility, they've got the heart to help people without
Yeah.
having the greed, and that often comes, or often comes, always comes with power and control and money. Those of
Mm,
us that have been destroyed by God so much that we don't care about the spirit of mammon anymore. We just want to see the community of Christ grow and for the kingdom to come to earth.
exactly. And I honestly, I chatted with Anth this morning about it again. This is my vision. This is my piece. This is what I want to do for Christ. There'll be more on it in the coming months, but yeah, I really want to lead something like this as we head towards this system because they can't win. They can't win. Look at what the story of Moses and leading the exiles. He didn't know the sea was going to be parted until he got there. He's like, well, what do I do now? I'm trapped. And then he obviously, the big fella parts the sea for him. It's game over. I don't know. We don't know all the answers, but yeah, we're at a real big turning point in history. There's no coincidence that at the top of the top of the chat you mentioned, there's just this strange natural surge towards Christ and also the disproportionate amount of followers that are XRP holders as well. It and I can attest to that anecdotally. Just the sheer amount of evidence for that in within my community, and there's a lot of people that have reached out to me. I can't even keep up with it anymore. That get it, and that has to count for something. And I've been spending 6 months quantifying and connecting the pieces and listening to God, and what He's telling me is that's where we're heading. And just like Job, we probably can't even conceive how beautiful it actually will be. I'm sure it'll be tough. I'm sure it'll be, there might have to be real pushback at times and fighting to not, violent fighting, but fighting for the truth. But I think, yeah, I think that's where we're heading. And I actually, as I said earlier, I am excited. I'm really just at peace, and it's so empowering when you know that's where you're heading, and you've got the Father with you as your rock. So that's where I'm at.
Well, Noah started building the ark. Even this is what I feel like XRP is. It's that ark. Noah started building the ark. Everyone laughed at him. Everyone told him he was crazy. No one had ever seen a drop of rain. He started building it before one drop ever fell.
Mm,
And that's, what I feel about this, especially after. I just want to thank you so much because I had, questions. And you've clarified a lot for me. And as you were speaking, I really got a lot of checks in my spirit about this. It's like you won't have to be a part. of the beast system if you have this behind you, or
Mm.
you know people that do. So, all
It
right.
is empowering, Holly. Yeah, I mean, because you grapple with it, you get fearful at times, and we don't want to act out of fear, but you see the abomination that a lot of the world is becoming. But yeah,
I've been praying for a solution. People have asking me because I've got a membership that I run, my God Squad membership, and we've been talking about this stuff for ages. And I've just been praying for a solution. God, give me a solution, pray for a solution. I feel like this conversation has just really hammered that nail in. And it's like you've already got it. You already bought it back in 2020.
yeah, it is. Honestly,
Stack
Holly,
more chips, girl.
can you imagine what's going to happen? Like, okay, look at this. Just extrapolate it, right? If we go a year from now, it's risen heaps, but we're already prepping, right? We're having these conversations within the community. We know that it's end game's just getting bigger and bigger. We're in that top tier of the two-tier system, and we're building the boats, and we're like, okay, look, the plan's clear. We need to start. Maybe we're funding free energy projects as well. We're moving towards harmonizing the skill sets we need to be self-sufficient in communities. There'll probably be multiple communities. We'll have to set things up in the US through the brothers and sisters over there. This I can see the permeation happening, and I can see he's got our back. He's had our back from the start when he told us to buy it. I just don't see him abandoning us and letting us fall prey. He wants us to bring as many people onto the ark, as you said. And I'm so into that, and I feel it in my loins, and I'm not fearful at all.
I'm so here for it. This
Yeah,
conversation has just brought me so much peace.
I'm
Thank you.
glad.
Thank you
No,
so
you're
much.
welcome.
Praise
Let's thank
God.
the praise God. Praise God.
Praise God. Ah, awesome. All right. So, just to give people a little bit of direction, and again, this is not financial advice. Do your own research. Go and look at some stuff. I'm going to put Nathan's comments and, sorry, his connecting links and all of that in the show notes. I don't know why my brain just had a meltdown then. The linky
It's
things.
the peace from Christ. You be at peace, Holly.
Put links in the show notes. But if someone is like, oh, I want to get into this XRP thing, what would be the best way for someone to do that? And so I would always say to dollar cost average, just put a little bit each week from your pay. You don't have to go and sell your house and chuck it all in XRP now and all of that. Don't worry about that. But where would be the best place to buy this coming up and coming commodity?
Mm. Yeah, you hit the nail on the head there. It depends on your situation, but if you've just, you're struggling to get by and you're still in the trenches and you don't have a ton of capital, dollar cost averaging is your best bet, which is setting up the easiest way to do that. I've done a video. Maybe we can chat offline. I've actually done a reel on this, which makes it super easy to understand. So where you just set an automatic deposit from your bank account into your chosen exchange. I use OKX for this sort of stuff, but I use Stormrake for bulk purchases, which we'll get to in a second. And then it'll just automatically take, if it's $100, take $100 out a week, and it just automatically buys, and you don't have to worry about anything. It just slowly accumulates. It's all automatic. A lot of my friends have done that up here, and they've been shipping away the last 8 months, and they've built up a nice little bag of XRP. And then there's a second scenario where if you're really sold and you kind of get it, and you've got a stack of cash sitting on the sidelines and you want to get some decent exposure to it, that's where I think using a broker is probably the best. So I use Stormrake, which is they're not an exchange. They have relationships with tons of exchanges. They're your personal broker. It makes it more personal as well. It's like a white glove solution. They'll hold your hand through the process if you've never done this before. They'll call you and set up your account, and it's very personal. So if you like that type of process, more hands-on and helpful, I'd recommend doing that, and they can facilitate, whatever transaction you want. And they're the two routes. Softest landing would probably be the handheld if you've never done it before. But if you're more industrious and want to do it on your own, then go down the exchange route. And yeah, we'll link that video down below on how to set up a automatic dollar cost averaging setup.
Yep, that's great.
And
My
that's
last
pretty much it.
my last piece of advice to people is that if you're buying on an exchange, so if you're going through CoinSpot or OKX or any of those, there's so many exchanges.
Yeah,
You can buy XRP on so many exchanges. That doesn't really matter. What you also need to do, my highest piece of advice, is get yourself what's called a cold storage wallet, like a Ledger or I don't know the other ones. That's the one I've
decent. My ones now, I'm using Tangem. I love Tangem. They're the cards. I will say, just because it is important from a user standpoint for people who are new to this. Well, yeah, you finish your point. I don't want to cut you off. You're going to make the point about the importance of the cold storage, and then I'll fill in the blanks with the user-friendly side of things.
So to put it really simply, and correct me if I'm wrong, the exchanges where you go online, where you put your money in to buy some XRP, just as if you were going to buy it on a stock exchange or whatever, that's called a hot wallet. You don't control that money, really. If that exchange goes down, all of your money goes with it. So you really need to then transfer that out to what's called a cold storage wallet, which is a physical hard drive, kind of like a USB. You're putting it on a USB, but it also has a backup on the internet of things. And what this will do is that means if an exchange goes down, because they have done FTX and all, like it's not outside of the realm of possibility, no matter how big and powerful the exchange seems to be, there is always a possibility that someone could like that it could implode. If heaven forbid there is some sort of worldwide internet crash, EMP, fantastical scenario, put your tinfoil hat on for that one. But if there's anything like that that happens, you want to have it on your cold storage as well. It's like
Spot on.
a cold backup. So just make sure you do that. And then just don't lose it.
Yeah.
Don't lose your keys.
Well, the thing that's really neat about, and this is why, like I've got a bunch of XRP on Tracer, so a lot of look, they're all good. It's just the thing that you got to remember with most of them is you'll have to write down and hide the unique 12 or 20 word seed phrase. So say you lost your Tracer or your Ledger or your Decent somehow, the only way to get back in is to buy a new cold storage and then input those words. And most people write those words on a piece of paper and hide them somewhere, which can also be finicky. The reason I use the Tangem is you just get 3 cards and that's it. There's no words or letters. You have 3 shots at goal. If you lose all 3 cards, you're stuffed. But it's pretty hard to lose all 3 cards, and it's super simple. It just taps onto your phone, and you're into your thing. You put your passcode in, and away you go. If someone finds one of your cards, they can't get in because they would need to know the passcode to get in. So user-friendly people. If that sounds like more you can. I'd recommend getting a Tangem. But the the notion remains it's much better just having it offline for safety. And then, of course, that's where you have the power when you want to sell, say exchanges bust or EMP or whatever. That's why I think having a broker option as well, like Stormrake, is important because then you give your broker a call and you say, all right, well, what exchanges are active? What deal can you get done for me? And they're like, oh, well, we can get a deal done for you here. They're still running and they've got enough liquidity for you to exit. Sweet. Then I'll send my tokens from me. I'll send them back to Stormrake, whatever I want to sell, and they'll arrange and make sure that deal goes through. So having that is kind of that medium's important. But as you say, CoinSpot's pretty good. CoinSpot's heavily backed by like their fingerprints on ATO and the government, and like they're not going to go down. They're pretty safe, but still best to have it in cold storage.
Yeah, absolutely. Amazing. And we'll put down a couple of links. Um, amazing. Thank you so much. Is there anything last thing you want to add? Is there anything that you want to just tell people on their walk with God that just is on your heart to say? Anything the Lord's telling you?
The final thing I will say, Holly, is this has been coming for such a long time. The death of the financial system, much like when Christ died for us on the cross, it will be reborn. It will liberate us. It will set us free. And if you want the symbolic proof of this, I'm going to leave this in closing as a special little nugget. Can I share screen?
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
Just gonna allow it. If you're listening to this on Spotify, guys, the YouTube channel will be up and running shortly.
So these, have we got the, oh no, I've got to do the share screen, don't I? Uh, Entire screen. Oh, good old Zoom. Come on, let me do it. Maybe I can send you. It's going to make me quit.
Yeah,
Shocker.
that's all right.
Here,
Send
let
it
me
to me.
send you the. I'll send this to you and quickly because the audience will absolutely love this. I need to. This is wild. Um, one, two. Is there a little chat in here that we can send things to? Yes, we can. Cool. No, no, no. God, sorry, Holly. I need this point to be made. It's so good.
That's all right. We can put a link in the show notes if you want.
Yeah, okay, we're going to do that. But then after the call, I'm showing you because you'll be mind blown.
All right.
But thank you, guys. You will see that in the show notes and you'll be blown away.
Okay. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Hang around, Nathan. I want to speak to you about some stuff after this. And thank you, guys. Make sure you share this one far and wide. We want as many people on the ark as possible,
Yes, that's
right?
it.
We want as many people on the ark as possible. We want to save as many people from having to be trapped in a system that they, you know, have programmable money and all of that. Like this stuff is coming down the pipeline, whether you like it or not. It's time that the scales drop from your eyes. So thanks, guys. Thanks for listening. Share it. Bye.